Let's get ready to rumble!
Hello, and welcome to Netflix vs. Cinema, the podcast that today is finally allowed by our self-imposed rules to talk about WandaVision in its entirety. But seeing as only 2/3 of us have seen WandaVision, we're going to keep that to the end and make a nice little package all about WandaVision spoiler nonsense that Shaun and I shall do together. My name is Tosin, I am the host, and I am based up in Bromsgrove in Worcestershire. And joining me as always on the Isle of Wight are Sharon.
Hello.
And Shaun.
Hiya.
Now, for those of you who might only hear us and don't actually follow us on any social media or anything like that, we're recording this over Zoom. And Shaun has started doing this thing where he has a picture up in the background where you have to figure out who the actors are and what film they're in. And he has picked up a bit of a doozy this week that I think none of us got everything right. Let's put it that way. I think between Sharon and I, we kind of almost got all the actors in the picture right, but we totally failed on the film. So Shaun's sitting down there with this sort of like massive Bond grin on his face, like Bond villain grin, like yes, my plan has come together. But yeah, follow us on social media on the Facebook at Netflix via Cinema, on Twitter at Netflix via Cinema, and play around and see how many of these people you could have gotten yourself. But now we get onto the films this week, and we have all had busy weeks film watching, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yep, we've all had, yeah. So I think Shaun, you've seen what, 4?
5, I think.
Okay, Shaun has seen 5 in the last week. Sharon, you've seen?
I've seen 2.
Okay, Sharon's seen
Plus
2.
I caught up on Walking Dead and Sky Arts.
Yeah, it's Walking Dead. I've seen.
You know.
Sharon, I've seen 2 episodes, but is there 3 in the new lot? Is there one to come? Or
I think there's another couple. I think there's another 2.
Right, so we can't. So we'll be able to do that to make
we
up.
We can do a Walking Dead.
Walking Dead one.
Yeah, every now and then on this show, a new series of The Walking Dead either premieres or finishes, and Sharon and Shaun do probably what Shaun and I are about to do with WandaVision, and Sharon and Shaun go off and go, oh, this, that, the other, and there's just me sitting down there going, can't be bothered.
Stow over The Walking Dead. Yeah.
Can't be bothered. The Walking Dead, it ruined Jeffrey Dean Morgan. It ruined him. As Shaun said the other week, all he can do now is Negan, or all Negan was him. So have you ever thought that maybe that's all Jeffrey Dean Morgan was doing before he got the role of Negan, but now that he has Negan, it's just really, really obvious that that's all he did?
I still think of him partly as the Winchester's father in Supernatural, but I only watched the first sort of 6 seasons of Supernatural before I gave up on that completely. But yeah, he was in the very first 2 seasons of Supernatural as their dad.
Push, you can't go there. You can't go on that. You can't go on that.
Sean, are you talking to a cat?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Right, cool.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. No, there's a cat. He was just about to leap on the keyboard.
All right, cool.
So yeah,
because he just started saying stuff, and I was like, I don't know why, but I just feel like he's talking to a cat.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Okay, cool. So that's gonna happen, and at some point, you guys are gonna talk Walking Dead. Okay, cool. And I promise to be civil. I promise to be civil when that happens. Okay, so you had to, Shaun, you had 5. I had, I'm sure I watched more, but at the moment, there's only 2 things I can remember. So what we're going to do is that we're going to run through the different things that we watched, have a quick, almost like 1-sentence review of them, and then each one of us is going to pick one thing that we watched this week to bring to the table and say, now this is the one I really, really want to talk about and go in depth with. So, Shaun, as the winner, whenever we do something like this, because you watch everything, would you like to take us through all the things you watched and the one that you want to bring forward and talk about over and above all the others?
Okay, so here we are. I mean, I have to remind myself, I did write them down because I've done it before, and I'm sure there's loads of stuff I've seen that we haven't reviewed because, it just sort of slips your mind, doesn't it? Like you said, you're not sure what you remembered. But anyway, I'll start off. Well, there's this film called The Rising Hawk, 2019 film. It's basically these villagers have gone up into the Carpathian Mountains to hide from the Mongols, but the Mongols appear up there. I think it's loosely based on a story of the Mongols coming, and there's 2 brothers, which the leader of their tribe is that he wants to fight the Mongols, and then you've got the leader of another tribe who wants to work with the Mongols, but bad things happen, kidnaps, the normal bit of love story, loads of sort of arrows and swords and people getting chopped off and stuff with big axes and you know. So generally just normal. The Rising Hawk 2019, normal, run of the mill. Seen them a dozen times, not particularly great. It's okay. It's okay as a watch.
It was in the Carpathian Mountains. Is it like you say the Mongols and all that? Is it an American production or is it?
I don't really know without looking. I would say it's a Europe. Yeah, I would say it's a European production. It's
all right, cool. All right.
So
not that enamored. How many stars?
Probably give it a low 3.
Right.
3 because
cool.
It was watchable. I wouldn't like. There was some moments I was like, oh come on.
Okay, cool. Quick fire round.
Forgivable. So that's
cool.
it.
Quick fire round. What's next?
Okay, next we got the silencing. Okay. This is quite a recent one actually. I'm thinking I might save this for another time actually. So we'll save the silencing.
Okay.
And I'll move on to the Banana Splits movie.
Oh yeah.
Right. Okay. I love the Banana Splits when they were little. Uchongo, all that. This basically is the story. The Banana Splits things are still going. Bunch of kids go to watch it with adults, and you've got all the people, couples go to. Yeah, I love it. But of course, there's strange things going on, and so there's the it's not what I seem. So there's like mayhem and a lot of red makeup and stuff, and stuff running around and that bit silly, really silly actually, really really silly. But again, low 3 stars, average film. You could watch it, but there's nothing new. There's nothing great in it.
I heard that people are essentially taking the Banana Splits and trying to turn them into a horror movie.
Yeah. Well, that's basically what it is. It's just like a horror movie with silly traps and and like you got a young lad that's like, oh, Snorky, I like Snorky. So he's my favourite. And he turns out he's the pretty nondescript one that I never really thought about much. And I can't go into that story about anyway. But anyway,
quick fire.
So yeah, low 3 stars on this. And the other one, which I'll put for now, was Thank You for Your Service. So this was a 2017 film about soldiers coming back from Iraq with PTSD, based on a true story, loosely based on a true story. The normal things, you get one who sort of commits suicide, and the others, they try, they're hiding it all up and that. So the wife saying, "Oh, let me in," and they go to meetings and things like that. So this one will do a 3 star. It's a little bit long, I think. It's a bit too long. Could have been a bit shorter, but nevertheless, it's as I say, it's not. There are a few action scenes in it of the incidents that happened, because basically he carried one of his mates, one of his soldiers that was wounded, and dropped him, and he's blaming himself, but he's being really cool about it and really calm. So yeah, so average film, 3 star.
Okay, so that's like a 3 star, varying high, low, 3 star across the board.
Yeah, pretty much.
You've gone through all those. What is the film that has risen above the 3 star mediocrity to get you to the point where you say, I want to talk about this one?
Okay. So I'll save the silencing. Then I'll keep that in the bag sometimes, because I could probably talk a little bit more about that.
Okay.
This film, right? Okay, this is a film and stars. What have I? Do you remember what things have I said about Keira Knightley in the past? What things have I said about Keira Knightley?
She pouts.
Yeah, she's a super pouter and like a. Now
I just remember, generally speaking, you're not a fan.
Yeah. So, but in this, she's surprisingly good.
Oh.
And this is the story of the 1970 Miss World contest. Which,
I wanted to see this, but I've never seen it yet.
Yeah, it was one of those films. It was one of those films that it came out.
Either
the week of, or essentially the release of this film in the cinemas coincided with, hey, the Who saying, "Oh, by the way, guys, this is a pandemic.
Yeah.
stay at home." So so it's one of those films that it was everywhere. They actually put a lot of work into the publicity for this film, and it kind of disappeared because no one got to see it in the cinema.
But the thing is with this, when this happened, I was 10 years old. And I remember, I don't remember it in depth to that extent, but I remember it being major news, because you had all these groups, all these women's libs groups, and there was flower bombs thrown at Bob Hope. There was, big demonstrations and a lot of fuss. And this was the first one when a black, Miss Grenada wins it, and so it's the story of behind the scenes, all the Miss World contests turn up and it's all like a show. Come on, love, come on, hurry up. People come out in the morning. Okay, turn around here. Now we're going to see the back shots. Thank you very much. All that sort of stuff. And then you've got the scenes where you've got these different women libbers groups. You've got like some real militant ones and ones that aren't quite so militant. And what they decided to do is they said, how are we going to get in? Oh, let's buy tickets. Keira Knightley just comes up with let's buy tickets. Of course, they all get arrested and stuff. But I really have to say that in this, Keira Knightley was really good. I'm sort of from original. I must say that I was quite impressed with her in this.
Because I'm guessing Keira Knightley would have been playing one of the people on the women's lib front. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah,
because I think I think it might coincide with it might be a coincidence but it definitely does coincide with the upturn in sort of like her performances, that lately she's been doing a lot more stuff that is kind of like almost like this is something I actually believe in, especially when it comes to sort of like feminist causes and fighting for the place of women in the world. She says some stuff, and she's been going on TV shows and she says some stuff that some people think is, hang on, that's taking it a bit far. Like she won't let her children watch The Little Mermaid, the Disney film The Little Mermaid, because in her words, no woman should ever have to give up her voice for a man.
And
she says things like that, but I think it means that it does show because she's gone to the point where she doesn't have to take work if she doesn't want it. So you find her doing a lot of things that she actually does believe in. And I could, so when she said this, I was like, she's gonna have to be one of the people on the women's lib front.
She definitely is. She's
whereas like 10 years ago, she would have been one of the contestants.
Definitely. But in this, so this movie is seen from all points of view. It's seen from the movie of Julia Morley. It's seen from the point of view of the people that are putting on the show. It's seen from the contestants in the show. And it's seen from the demonstrators. And also it's a scene. It's really like her mum's in it, and there's a couple of times when her mum's obviously because she's got a little girl anyway, and her mum's like putting makeup on the little girl, and it's like, Mum, what are you doing? And all stuff like that. Goes, well, you'll never hear, blah blah blah. Anyway, cut a long story short. So the mother's like old school, and she's saying, oh, you shouldn't have given, you've wasted, you've given up your life to be a housewife, blah blah blah. So there are a lot of themes in that, which is about different generations, their ideas. This was a great movie. I thought. I really enjoyed it. I don't know what sort of reviews it's got. I'm looking now at it, and it's got like on EMBD, it's got a 6.2. But I never really look at the things before I do a review. But there were so many, I had to remind myself. But I think it's worth more than that for me. I would give this a 4-star. I would give this one a 4-star. I really, really enjoyed it. Maybe it's because I can actually remember the incident. I can remember the things. The guy who plays Bob Hope's really good, but I remember it being a really, really big controversial, time really, and what happened
we forget now, don't we, how big a deal the Miss World competition was? Because
it used to be
disappeared from our radar, but it was one of the biggest television events of the year. I remember watching it every year, and it was big deal who won Miss World. It would make people's careers. It would, for the women who won it, it made their careers.
And what's another thing on this?
They became world famous.
At the end, the people who played the characters, there's a couple in there that actually are interviewed at the end. That played the characters. So you've actually got a couple that were really there, and also some of the contestants, what they went on to do. I won't give any spoilers or anything, but it's at the end there. You've got that little montage of this so the person who was playing one of the feminists is actually there saying, because they got arrested and things and all that sort of stuff, and it says what they're doing now. And so I thought it was a great watch.
I liked the idea of the film when I heard about it, because there's, from the poster, it seems that there's one, you can look at this and you can think this is a story about, quite frankly, a black woman in Miss World, because obviously it has Gugu Mbatha Raw, and she is in quite a prominent spot. And
well, there's two Miss South Africas,
two Miss South. Oh, is it that they sent a white one and a black one or something?
A white South Africa and a black South African. I did remember that part of it, but that's quite interesting,
Yeah, but I think the fact that they've essentially used this whole thing of Miss World to look at a lot of things. There's racism, there's feminism, there's sexism, that all around that this one thing, this one innocuous looking, frilly, give us a twirl kind of thing. But it looks like they've used that thing to say, look, there's almost like a lightning rod moment in the 70s. So I liked the idea of the film.
It's a great film, and obviously some of the contestants are like, well, I could really do with winning this. This could put me on the map, because exactly like Sharon said, they used to go on to big things, didn't they?
Yeah, because I remember
it's great, and I liked it, and I think for me it's pretty well balanced. That's what I like about it. And you see it from a lot of different points of view of a lot of different characters, which to me is good movie making, because you're not actually saying. Because sometimes you can get films that are just totally blatantly in your face. Like this could be a total film about feminism, and everything could be feminism with no other points of view. Whereas this, you've got different points of view, and I really like that in a movie. Yeah,
I think that works, doesn't it? Because you think, look, for the women who chose to be these sort of contestants who entered these competitions, they weren't stupid women who didn't know any better. And it's like, we're helping you out, dear. So just like trust us, we know what's good for you. It's like, no, they were able to make their choices, and they chose to do that. Yeah. So who are you to say, no, you can't make that choice? Because there was this big thing, it reminded me actually when you were saying that, about the Formula One girls, how they suddenly said, we're no longer going to have the girls with the champagne and coming out with their, at the end of Formula One races, because it's offensive. And then the girls were saying, hang on a minute, you're putting me out of a job. I've worked really hard to get this job. And this is the job I've aspired to do. Who are you to say that it's offensive for me to do this when I've aspired to do this?
Exactly. And I think the thing is, it's getting that way now, where you're getting people
to every argument, isn't there?
Yeah, every argument, but the trouble is, I think, and I mean, even me, who I consider myself to be a bleeding heart liberal, I like, sometimes I think some of these things are going too far. And if you say anything against it, or you have an opinion, well, you're this, or you're that, or do you know what I mean? And there's and you can't really have an opinion now without being called something, even if you're not that, if you're not that. Anyway, let's not go into that.
It's a big thorny thing, because I understand what you're saying, because I think that there was a previous edition of the podcast in which I spoke about how I'd said something on Twitter about a female tennis player whose attitude I don't like. As I think she's a brilliant tennis player, and I said something about the fact, I was like, I thought she was going to win. I thought she was good enough to win, but her attitude really, really, really got up my nose. Yeah. And people came at me, because it was kind of like it's like you can't, and there was this sort of like thing of nuance. And I understand where they're coming from, and I understand that for some people, they see anything that's said that isn't 100% positive as an attack, because for a long time, that's what it was. For a long time, if you want to talk about women, for a long time, women were shut up. Women were, it's like, oh yeah, just go make the tea or something. And they were just sort of like ignored with that. And I can imagine that that's a raw thing. It's a bit like, and whenever these things happen, I try and relate it to something like myself as a black man. When some people will say things like, one of the big no-nos at the moment is if somebody calls a black person eloquent, because for instance, like with me, I speak quite good English, and some people be like, oh my God, you speak good English, you're quite eloquent. And it's kind of like, well, because I'm black, I'm supposed to be like an idiot. And and so there is that thing in there. But I still feel, with me, my approach to it is, everybody's on a journey, and during that journey, people are going to make gaffes, and they're going to say things. They're going to ask questions, which are very likely to be offensive. But if you just jump down their throat, you shut down the conversation.
Yeah.
You shut down the conversation. You don't allow the person any room to grow. Because there's some people who just don't want to, like Piers Morgan. But yeah, there's some people who don't want to, and they just want to yell and say their own thing and whatever it is, and then they never want to examine what it is they actually think. But I think for me, because I'll tell you one of the things, right? At the moment, when you talk about things like using gender pronouns and people to deciding what pronouns they want to know, whether they want to be he, she, they, or... So that's something that I have so many questions about. But I know that a lot of the questions and for me, that's my learning process. I want to ask questions. And when the questions are answered, maybe I'll understand a little bit better what the heck's going on in the world now. But I know that that's something that if you ask certain questions, as Shaun says, you will be just immediately, for goodness sake, I can't believe this bigoted person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You'll be shot down. Yeah.
Yeah, but I have a lot of questions, and I think when you actually can have a good conversation about it, but I think I understand that the people who, like, let's say somebody who uses they pronouns, I understand that what they have been met with a lot is people looking at them like they're weird, or looking at them like they're not supposed to exist. So the second anybody asks a question, I can know a lot of people, it's like triggering for a lot of people. But I really, really hope that what we can get to is a point where you can ask a question and we can sit down, and through this asking these stupid questions, as long as you're willing to learn, we can get somewhere where we actually understand what the hell's going on in the world.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough of my sermon and my soapbox moment. Enough of my sermon. But Shaun, you reckon that Misbehaviour did this really well and showed essentially treated everybody like human beings?
Yeah, treated everybody, and it came from a lot of different points of view. It wasn't humongously biased, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
it was because you can get films like that, can't you? Where it's just so like in your face.
It's just a polemic. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas this was yeah. So it's worth, for me. It's worth the 4 stars, and I would love Sharon to see it sometime, and then
absolutely. It was on my list of things to watch.
Yeah. Where did you watch that?
Cinema going for Gemma. We were planning on watching that.
I watched all them Sky Cinema, except for Banana Splits, which was Amazon. So I mean, the thing is, what's good with the Sky Cinema is when I'm in the room. I mean, because I'm in the room and I'm doing stuff, I can put actually stuff on. So I go through like the Skybox thing with Sky Cinema, and I can just go through, and if there's one that's just sort of starting, I just put it on to see if I'm going to like it or not. And because I mean, I didn't know about this film. I knew nothing about this, and if it hadn't been for just flicking through, I probably wouldn't have watched it. Same with the Flying Hawk and stuff. You know, it's not. These films are films that I didn't go out of my way to watch.
So what you're saying is that it's better for you. It works better than something like Netflix, because the film's starting anyway, and then you just sort of put it on in the background, and then you get With Netflix, you have to choose to watch. You have to choose,
yeah. Whereas this is sort of choosing for me, because if there's something, I mean, there was something on the other day which was, what was it? I don't even know. It didn't grab me. I watched it for about 20 minutes. I think it was Robert. Was it Robert? No, it was. Who was in it? Who was the guy who used to be in Bros? Luke Goss.
Matt and Luke Goss, but which is, I don't know. Is it Luke?
No, I don't know what film it was.
I think Luke Goss is the actor.
Yeah, he's the actor, but this film, and I watched a little bit of it, and it was just like, didn't really grab me, you know.
Oh,
I've got to tell you this. Did I tell you last week about Six Underground?
No.
Right. Okay. Now, how about this? I've got to tell you this. I know this is going off on a tangent. Right, Six Underground. Right. I was talking at work with Pete. Pete come up with this. There's a guy called Pete, and he says, "Oh, I watched that Six Underground. That was really good. It was like Fast and Furious. It was like all that." And I mean, I hated that movie. Right. Anyway, there's Dan, who I live with, another one. We were having breakfast, and we were sat at breakfast. He says to me, because he's sort of quite quiet. He says, "Oh, I watched that Six Underground the other day," and I thought, "Oh, okay." And I thought he was going to say it. He went, "It was absolute SHI." Anyway, he really, really hated it. He said, I could never watch it again. It was an awful film. And I was like, yeah. So we went in and saw Pete the next day. And I said, can I say that on the pod? He said, yeah, of course you can. Yeah. But, so I was like, yeah. He said, it was blooming awful. Worst film we'd seen.
Six Underground is objectively a bad film.
Yeah, thank you. But it's just that I just had to put that in there because it was just, I was sort of felt vindicated, because Pete was going on about how this film was going to be the new Fast and Furious franchise and how great it was.
No.
And now he's backtracked a bit and gone, well, I didn't say it was great. I said it was all right.
Yeah, no. It's objectively a bad film. It's badly made. But
So
anyway, yeah.
yeah,
So
sorry, Tosin.
one more thing about Six Underground. When I say
Yeah.
it's an objectively bad film, and I
Yes.
know that obviously it's kind of like people talk about things being subjective or everything like that. But I mean, from a storytelling point of view, if somebody is telling you a story and the person kind of goes, "Once upon a time" and the end, that is an objectively bad story because they have they have missed out what it is to tell you. And I think when you think about filmmaking, when you think about when you're looking at something, when you think about where you're trying to understand, like, okay, this person is over here, then all of a sudden they're over there. How did the heck that happen? This person is happy, then all of a sudden the next moment they're crying. That is what Six on the Ground is like. It just doesn't hold together narratively, which is why I say it's an objectively bad film. But anyway, now let's go on to let's go on to Sharon. Sharon, what are the things you watched this week? Talk us through the things you watched, and ending with the one that you want to bring forward.
Okay, I did my catching up on my recorded program, so I won't go into those. But I do like to watch things like The Great Pottery Throwdown.
Yep.
And I do like to watch Sky Arts Portrait Artist of the Week and Landscape Artist of the Year. So I do record those, and I do have like a catch-up evening, which is why I don't always get to watch as many films as you gentlemen. And so the films I watched this week, I watched Damsel, which is the one I'm going to review, so I should have said that last. But my also ran is a film called A Call to Spy, and it's basically based on the true story of the SOE, the Special Operations Executive, where they basically sent people into occupied France to help the resistance. And it's become much parodied over the years because of, Allo and all these sort of things, and dropping British operatives into with their bad French accents, and you've got all these tropes about the berets and ankle socks, and listen very carefully as we say this anyone. So it's become a bit of a trope. So this is like basically a film that's trying to tell the true story of two of the women who went into occupied France and worked in the resistance there.
Oh wow!
So it's an interesting film, not very because it's based on a true story, and I think they've tried to keep it a bit factual. It's a little bit dry, and I found it was a little bit bit snoozy, so I have to say. So it was interesting on a more of an intellectual level. It's good to see that they are re-examining that period of history, because it was so much parodied, like with the Secret Army, then with the Low, and then with other things, that I think the fact that people are actually looking at that period of history again and saying, actually, let's just strip away all the things we think we know and let's try to have a look at what actually did happen. So it's interesting, and so I'd give it a 3 because it was interesting, but not great entertainment, because I don't think they made it as an adventure film. It's not Carpe Name with Pride, let's put it that way.
Oh, wow.
So but yeah, you could say the best you could say for it is interesting.
So how many stars?
3.
3. And where did you watch that?
This afternoon.
No, where? Like on Netflix?
On what platform? I watched it on Netflix.
Netflix, okay. A Call to Spy on Netflix. And so, Damsel. Tell us about
I watched
Damsel.
Damsel. That's on Netflix again, and that's a film that stars Robert Pattinson and Mia Wasikowska.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's basically set in the American West. And it was billed as a comedy western, though I don't really think it fit either category.
It's one of those things. Whenever anybody starts off a sentence with, "It was billed as a," that doesn't really bode well.
Yeah. So I think I don't know if they intended it to be comic or ironic.
Yeah.
So to me, it was more an ironic title and an ironic sort of time setting.
Okay.
But the story is basically it's you start off with these two people are waiting for a stage. One of them is an older man dressed as a preacher, traveling preacher, black hat, black suit, white shirt, string tie, and the other man is a little bit down on his luck, but they're waiting for this stagecoach. And then just before the stagecoach arrives, the sort of preacher gets up and just starts taking all of his clothes off, and he says basically, I've had enough. This has not done me any good. I'm tired of everything. Maybe this will do you better good. And he gives all of this stuff to this man, and then he walks off into the desert, presumably to die. And then the scene changes to a scene where you've got Robert Pattinson all dressed up in his sort of courting gear with a tiny little Shetland pony that he's going to take to his sweetheart who's been living out west.
Oh, yeah.
And this is like he wants the preacher to go with him to marry them, so that this little horse is going to be like your wedding present, and that here's the preacher, he's going to marry her, so everything's going to be perfect. And as the story unfolds, you realize that no one is quite what they seem. And so when it talks about Damsel, and Robert Pattinson is heading out west to rescue Mia Wasikowska from the situation that she's found herself in, you realize that things are not as they seem.
All right.
And maybe the damsel that needs rescuing isn't actually her. Mm-hmm. And then as the story progresses, the aspect of who is the damsel in distress, who needs rescuing, just change throughout the film, and it suddenly does take like a right turn, a 90-degree turn at certain points in the film where you're thinking, oh, I think I understand where this narrative is going, and okay, that's not going quite okay, that's not. And so it does do these sort of sudden complete change in directions, and you go and it makes you reevaluate who's the damsel, who needs rescuing, who is the hero of this film. And so it does change its that aspect all the way through.
So maybe not quite revisionist. I think revisionist might not be the word to use, but a bit like, how we were talking about Bridgerton and how the lady who wrote Bridgerton, whose name I cannot remember.
Julia Quinn.
That's it, Julia Quinn. She says that she deliberately gives her female characters, feminist attitudes that they would not have been allowed to have in that real period. Is it a bit like that, where you say this film has taken that time period and has done something with it that might not be accurate, but is probably making more of a point about today?
Yes, I think it certainly is evaluating that, again, from a feminist viewpoint. Robert Pattinson's character sets out, he is going to rescue Mia Wasikowska. Mm-hmm. Sorry if I mispronounced her surname. I never know quite exactly how to say it. But yes, and then as the film progresses, you realise she neither needs rescuing nor does she want to be rescued.
Okay.
And at different points in the film, the same assumption is made of different characters. Oh, I'm going to rescue you. I'm going to help you. It's like, actually, I don't want or need your help. So it's interesting in that regard. Entertaining. I watched it with my mum because we thought, that'd be quite a nice watch to watch. And neither of us were too completely impressed, really. We were a bit like, what's all that about?
Okay.
So for us, it didn't quite hit the mark.
Okay, so how many stars would you give it?
I would give it I'll probably say I give it a 3. There are moments to like about it, and there are interesting scenarios where you're going thinking, actually, they do meet a Native American in there who is, perfect. You were talking about you shouldn't make assumptions about how someone speaks based on how they look.
Yeah.
Again, he's eloquent and his speech is perfect. In fact, he's better spoken than a lot of the other characters.
Yeah.
And so it's like that juxtaposition of he looks like someone who lives sort of a pre-industrial existence as the Native Americans did.
Yeah.
And then, he speaks with perfect English and he's intelligent and he's, voicing these opinions that you think, whoa. But it is that juxtaposition of what their peers like. So again, it's like, who is the damsel here? So is he the victim of or is he someone who's completely in control of their existence?
Yeah.
So it does change your opinion and your how you see someone based on how they appear to based on what their reality is. So it's got some interesting ideas, but it just wasn't terribly good in places. I would give it a 3.
All right, I'm going to go. I have her name in front of me, and I'm going to go with Wasikowska. Wasikowska, or it could be Masikowska, but because it looks okay, this I'm going to lay out all my assumptions right now, because the name looks Polish, and I know that when they have a W, it usually goes into a V sound, so I'm going to go with Wasikowska. Mia Wasikowska. All right, cool. So 3 stars for that. It sounds like it's an interesting experiment, and quite frankly, that could be the definition of Robert Pattinson's career over the last decade or so.
He certainly chooses odd choices.
Yeah, it's like Robert Pattinson, an interesting experiment. The Lighthouse, an interesting experiment. So ever since Twilight, he just uses money to do all sorts of weird and wonderful things, which makes me think that the next Batman movie is going to be an interesting experiment. Because that's what gets in. That's what.
Yeah. It's quite funny. I decided I've got me top 10 films of the last decade, like 2010 to 2020. I sort of went through it.
You were saying that. Have you finally got your list sorted?
I think, it was a tough one, and there's like a tie on 10, but I've got most of them.
All right, cool. Okay, so just before I go through the things I watched this week, give us your top 10 films.
You sure you want the top 10? You want them, or do you want to save for another time? Yeah, I'll give you a top 10 if you want.
Yep, yeah, give us a top 10.
So we have got. Just to put my glasses on because
Can I make two guesses? I can guess two of them. I think 3.
You can. All right, then. Yeah, that'd be good.
I would guess you're going to have Baby Driver in there.
Oh, well done.
I would also guess Leave No Trace in there.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, well done. That's 2 of them.
And there's a now I'll stick with those 2 for now.
Yeah, okay. Do you want to have any stabs, Toes?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to go. The only things I can think of are the ones that came out recently. I'm thinking maybe 1917.
Well, I'll tell you what. If people watch the Facebook page or anything like that, they can come up with what they think I might like of the last 10 years.
Okay. So
give you a little bit of time to think about it. You too, Sharon. So maybe you can say.
We'll put that up there, and then next week Shaun will reveal what his top 10 movies of the last decade are. So we're talking 2010 to 2020.
20, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so 2010 to 2020.
You've got a couple. Sharon's giving you a little hint there. So
yeah. All right.
There's some interesting ones in there.
Hell or High Water.
I'm not saying anymore. You'll have to have a guess.
All right, cool.
Okay.
So let's all right, let's go into the films that I saw this week.
Yeah.
So what I saw this week, I've narrowed down to 3 things. 3 things I actually completed seeing. So there was I found myself in the mood for documentaries, and I also had the whole thing where I'm trying to work through my Netflix list. So I was going through my Netflix list. I went to documentaries, and there was one of them on my Netflix list. So I was like, oh, I might as well watch this. And it's called Bikram. And it's about the guy who founded the hot yoga movement in America, going from the 70s onward. Yeah, and it's essentially, at the moment, the guy is a fugitive from America because he's wanted for court cases in America to do with allegations of sexual abuse. And it sort of talks about how this whole thing became a big deal, and how this guy became a big deal, and how Bikram became like a household name. But it also goes into, is he a charlatan? Is he a con man? What the heck is he? But whatever he is, he's really, really charismatic, and he managed to get a worldwide movement with people who pretty much treated this guy like a messiah, and pretty much treated this guy like, the sun shined out of his crack, which was very, very barely covered by a Speedo when he was doing his hot yoga. And whenever that kind of thing happens, I feel this is about to go wrong. Whenever people start treating a human being like a god, this thing's about to go south quickly. And it's a really well put together documentary. I'll probably give it a 4 out of 5. And it reminded me a bit of another one I watched called Epstein, which is all about Bernie Epstein, filthy, and it's all about how people can just build this thing around them and then use it for horrible things, which I don't know. It kind of makes me feel sad at the moment when
Isn't that funny? You have little phases, I think, of watching, like you say, certain documentaries, and then things, and it's like me. The past few weeks, I've had certain films that I've watched. Sort of political motivated films. A lot of the ones that I've seen.
It's one of I think, especially because of lockdown, you actually get to this point where you're actually like, what am I in the mood for watching? I don't just want to watch any random rubbish. It's like, what am I actually in the mood for watching? And it's weird how you do go through, just kind of like action movie, no, comedy, no. And I was like, oh, documentary. Yeah, I'm really in the mood for a documentary. It was really, really weird. So with that, I watched another one called Longshot. So these are both on Netflix. And Longshot it's really short. It's Longshot. It has the same name as the Charlize Theron, Seth Rogen movie that was released like last year or so, but it's nothing like that. This is it is a documentary about a guy who was saved from death row. He was saved from death row because he was accused of a crime that he said I wasn't there. He says I was at a baseball game, and the only way that they could find his entire case hinged on the fact that they were filming a TV show at the baseball stadium that day, and his lawyer had to go find the footage, had to go track this footage down to see if he appeared on the video footage or not. And I thought it was a really, really well told story. It was the way they put it together. And there's a bit where they're speaking to the guy because he's at the LA Dodgers. It's at the LA Dodgers stadium, and they speak to the LA Dodgers people and the guy who's in charge of the franchise, and who's talking about how we did our very best to help. And it's one of the things like what if, and it kind of is one of these things that shows a little bit about the fragility of the American justice system, because if it wasn't for this long shot of finding this one tiny bit of thing, this guy could have had the death sentence.
Wow.
And so it's a short thing. It's 40 minutes, and I would recommend that. I'll give it a 4 out of 5 as well. Now, the thing I want to talk about is something that is I watched this on Amazon Prime, and I've got to get this title right. It's called The Map of Tiny Perfect Things.
Ooh.
I keep confusing. I keep saying the map of little perfect things, but no, it's the map of tiny perfect things. So this is a film that starts off, and the posters look a little bit like a teen drama story, a bit defaulting as Starsy or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But it starts off, and then you see this guy, and it starts off. He's in bed. He wakes up, and he has this sort of like look on his face of like sort of typical teenage look on his face. He goes downstairs, and as he goes downstairs, his sister and his dad are there, and his sister starts speaking to him, and then he says what his sister's about to say, as she calls him a loser, and he says loser at the same time as she says loser, and then his dad is doing a crossword puzzle, and he's like, Dad, what you want is that down, that's ooga-doo-doo, that's this, that's that, that's that. And you find that he seems to be a step ahead of everything that's happening in his life. And as it transpires, it turns out that he's caught in a time loop. So Groundhog Day. So when the film starts, you don't know how many times he's lived through this day before, but he is going through all these different things that he's done every single day. He knows what you see him. He's leaving the house, and he picks up a pair of tongs from the kitchen, and he walks out of the house with them. And you're like, why the heck is he going out with that? Nobody knows. He goes and rides his bike through traffic because he knows exactly when the car is going to come and all that. So you don't know how many times he's been in this time loop. And so time loop movies, there's quite a few of them. There's time loop TV shows, things like Russian Doll on Netflix. There's quite a few, and I feel like with time loop movies, there's only they can't really explain why the time loop started, and then because they can't really explain why the time loop started, there's never really a satisfying reason for why the time loop stops. So it's always kind of, I've got to learn to be a better person or something vague like that. I mean, even Groundhog Day, which is a classic, it is all a bit kind of like, and a bit problematic in that, what I got to get the woman to love me. And then, but does she really love you if you've just figured out like 1,000 ways of her saying no? Then you finally manage to stumble upon the way that she says yes. And in this, what happens is their wrinkle is he is living through this whole thing, and they reference Groundhog Day. They reference all these other films, and they say, well, one of his friends is like, because he goes to one of his friends and he talks to him every single day because it's like, you're not going to remember this conversation. The time's going to reset at midnight, and you're not going to remember that I've spoken to you about this enough. I can tell you I'm in a time loop. You won't believe me. You would. And his friend was like, well, maybe it's like, you've got to find the girl, and you've got to fall in love with the girl, and maybe that's what will do that. So he finds a girl, and he thinks, okay, maybe she's the one. And he has this whole plan of where he's going to, that every day, well, on this day, she's walking past the swimming pool, and she gets hit in the head with like a beach ball and falls in the swimming pool. So he goes through a bunch of iterations where he thinks, if I just grab her just before she falls in the swimming pool, that could be the meet cute, and that could be it, and that's maybe where we could fall in love, and maybe I'll escape this time loop. Then one day, as he's going up to go grab her, the ball gets thrown, and somebody else walks by and grabs and catches the ball in midair without moving and keeps moving. So that means he's like, wait, how did you know that was going to happen? So he realizes that he's not the only one caught in a time loop. And it becomes, so there's him and a girl, and they're both caught in the time loop. And so they start hanging out each day to try and figure out what it is that they can do. And the film's called The Map of Tiny Perfect Things, because they go, we've been on this day, so many things. I'm sure there's all these lovely things that happen on this day that we can find. So they start trying to, because they're bored and they're trapped, they start trying to find all the perfect moments that happened on that one day. So there's a bit where they're sat by a lake, and an eagle comes down and swoops onto the lake and picks up a fish and flies off. There's a bit where there's a guy who sat down on a bus stop, and a bus comes behind him with angel wings painted on the bus, and it lines up perfectly so the angel wings are over the guy's shoulders. And so there's all these moments where they just go around and they just try to find it because they think maybe that's the point of it. So I quite liked it. I thought it was quite interesting. I thought it was it's trying to do something similar with a time, or something new with a time loop concept. And when they finally explain the time loop, it does raise a question that if that's what caused the time loop, does that mean that somebody else has trapped this person in the time loop? And do they have the right to trap them in the time loop? And because obviously there's a boy and a girl, there's going to be an element of a love story. And I think it's a bit like the film Passengers, where people were in arms about the film Passengers, because it's a bit like when you were asking about consent in Bridgerton. Oh, that's popping up again. And you were saying, oh, is that all right? And there's an element of that for me in this, where I'm like, but is that all right if that happened? And because that happened, that other person gets trapped in there with you. And there's a bit where they say, oh, it's not my story, it's their story. And I'm like, if it's their story, then what are you doing here? So it in trying to do something clever and trying to do something different, it raises some questions. So even though it's the film that I wanted to choose to talk about this week, and the other ones I'll give a 4 out of 5, I would give this a 3 out of 5. I think it's really, really well acted by Catherine Newton and Luke Allen, I think his name is, or Allen or something like that. And they, as a central pairing, are actually quite good. They're quite cute together. There's a whole bunch of like really, really indie moments where, this is the bit where you're supposed to, this is the Juno moment where everyone's going to fall in love with this thing. And they are well done, but I kind of feel a bit cynical about them. But I would recommend it. I would recommend it if you like your time loop things. I don't think it's massively anything different, but I think that the whole two people trapped in it in the same time and how the interconnectedness does something is quite interesting. So
that sounds quite nice.
Yeah, the map of tiny perfect things, I'll give it a 3 out of 5.
Ooh.
Right. So we've got to that point where Sharon.
Yes, I'm going to say adios.
Yes.
Amigos.
So we're going to end this noble thing, and then Shaun and I are going to have, I don't know, maybe a 15-minute discussion about WandaVision.
You can head into WandaVision land.
Yes.
WandaVision.
So until next week when I don't know what we'll be seeing, but I think we'll probably be ramping up for cinema's return, and we'll be seeing what it is that we can watch it. I think by now we should know what films are going to be released when in the cinema by next week.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah,
and as I say, keep guessing. Have those guesses on those films. Give that some thought and let them know next week.
Next week is when we will also see what Shaun's top 10 films are of the last decade. It's a goodbye from me.
It's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from me.